Hi. So I'm Liz Gaines. I'm a longtime tech reporter. I'm now trying a tech startup called 60dB doing audio reporting. But I'm so glad to come back and do an interview with Katherine, who runs this project that is so integral to our lives but is so invisible behind the scenes. Could you start out by telling us, and hopefully I'm not making too much noise with my earring there, could you start by telling us how you came to be in charge of Wikimedia?
Oh, gosh. I think I would start by saying no one's actually in charge of Wikimedia. That's kind of the amazing thing about it. But I am the executive director of the Wikimedia Foundation, and I actually started there 3 years ago as the head of communications, and about a year ago stepped into the executive director role, thanks to the support of a fantastic organization and board. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for. My background is...
Well, more about you, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Sure.
It's a very specific question, but I just want to know who you are.
Oh, right. So my background is in technology for human rights, global development. I worked with UNICEF for a while, organizations like the World Bank, National Democratic Institute, did some work on human rights and technology policy all over the world before joining Wikimedia.
And Wikimedia, I guess the top line stat is that you get a billion device visits a month, is that right?
Yes, it's a big number.
Yeah, that's huge. I think it's the 5th largest in the world.
I'm not
Something
sure
like that?
if it's the 5th largest. We track things a little bit differently because we don't actually track unique users. We're very privacy conscious, and so that's been a choice that we've made.
Okay, so you're nebulously huge.
We're just sort of, yes, in aggregate enormous.
Okay.
Definitely one of the, I would say probably one of the top 10 with the numbers like 1 billion unique devices, yeah.
And who are you, who as an organization, and as the people who work within the organization and who volunteer externally, and what describe that group?
So the Wikimedia Foundation is 277 staff members, to be very precise, because we're Wikipedia. And the Wikimedia community is a community of around 75,000 or 80,000 people every month that edit Wikipedia at least 5 times. So that's sort of the very specific, hardcore, very dedicated people who are coming back on a month-to-month basis. But we know that those return monthly visitors change every single month. So we generally say that we're 100,000 plus people over the world who contribute in all sorts of different ways, from editing articles, which is in some ways the easiest way to participate, to organized groups that do policy advocacy, for example, around open licenses at the European Parliament.
Okay, and I think the last, oh man, got to work on that microphone. The last big part of the introduction is how do you sustain yourselves?
Yes. So if you have been on Wikimedia at all in December of just a few months ago, you probably saw a banner asking for a contribution of around $3. The average donation that we receive is about $15, and we received those, I think, the year previous, 2016, or 2015, 5.4 million people from around the world contributed to support Wikipedia. So
actually that drive is what keeps you going? Or?
That drive is what keeps us going. It is about a little more than 90% of our overall operating budget is support from individuals who come from every continent on the planet and to give $1 and up. So every little piece of support really matters. We love the fact that we are supported by the world because it actually is quite similar to our contribution model of being built by the world. We think of Wikipedia as belonging to everyone. It doesn't belong to any one organization. It's really something for all of us.
So is that how you view what you do? Are you the guardian of something that exists, or where does it go from here? How can you change something that's so integral, but everything needs to grow with the times, not just in technology?
Definitely. We do think of ourselves as stewards, is actually the word that we use. The Wikimedia Foundation views itself as well, we think of ourselves as having a community that has a foundation, rather than the foundation having a community. And that's really critical to the way that we make choices, the way that we plan for our activities over the course of the year, the way that we budget for different activities. We want to be responsive to the community that we serve. And I think the challenge for us is always remembering that the community that we serve is not just the editing community, but is also the global reader community that engages with Wikimedia content, that uses it all over the world in ways that are are often far more creative than just simply reading an article, turning it into works of art in some cases, using it as inspiration for different projects. And so how do we be responsive to that community is something that we're constantly thinking about.
So if you could dream big, and I'm sure you are, but you're constrained by the reality of this big thing you have to maintain, how would it change?
Great question. I mean, one thing that we hear from users all the time, from people, no matter where we go, is that they'd love to have more media on Wikipedia. If you read it today, it's still primarily a text-based website, which is great and has lots of advantages. For example, if you are on a mobile device in a rural area of the world with limited internet connectivity, Wikipedia still loads really quickly, much more quickly than almost any other website. It allows us, for example, to operate with just a few racks of servers, 1,200 servers in total around the world. So it lets us—
Because you don't have videos.
Because we're still very lean, because text is a very lightweight format. But if we're thinking about the way that people are learning today, the way that the internet has changed and has conditioned users, they expect more rich images, more rich media, more rich video. And we have a lot of this, in fact, on our project Wikimedia Commons, which is beautiful images, 35 million media images, but it isn't fully integrated in Wikipedia. So I would love, just as a very first step, to see that.
Is that a problem of internet access? I mean, should you be getting out there and deploying drones or balloons or however
we
these
think
companies are
we
thinking
think of
about that?
ourselves as like the third goose in the V, right? So when you look up and you see the geese flying either north or south, the one in the front is often, it's cutting the wind, right? It's going out and ahead and making it easier for all the other geese to sort of draft off it. We are a small organization. Yes, we're 277 people, which is large for a tech nonprofit, but we're not in the position where we're going to go out and launch drones or necessarily be investing in what's the very next cutting edge technology. We sort of think of ourselves as how do we adapt and respond to markets once it's really clear that this is where this is where technology is going, because we want to make sure that when we're investing in things that really have the greatest impact on the greatest number of users. So Wikipedia as an interface feels like perhaps it hasn't necessarily evolved as fast as some other interfaces, but the reality is we're serving users who are on dial-up connections using IE6 on a desktop device, and we need it to be just as accessible for them as it is for somebody sitting here on their smartphone. So we're always balancing our investments against what is the long-term perspective for these projects. I guess my dream over the course of the next few years, and it may be more than a few years, is right now Wikipedia it's a website and it's an HTML rendered interface, and you can edit it primarily through that. It's not read-write on any device or any interface. I would love to get us from what we are today, which is a fairly unstructured repository of articles, to something that allows people on whatever devices might evolve towards in the future to be able to contribute as easily as you can right now on the browser. So you can already access Wikipedia from in-home audio or smart devices, and you can call up Siri on your phone and you can ask it a question, and that's all great, but a huge part of our model is contribution. So I think the question for the future is how do we get to contribution across different devices, not just in the web browser.
There's been a knock on Wikipedia for as long as I can remember about trying to encourage a larger diversity of contributors.
Yeah.
Have you been able to make progress on that front?
We've been able to make progress in some areas. Wikipedia, admittedly, is not, the editors are not as diverse as representative of the world around us, and that's something we'd like to see. We know that some of the limiting factors around contributing tend to be as much socioeconomic as anything else. You need leisure time in order to sit down and actually engage with the process of writing long-form content. It's not something you can do if you're busy running from one job to the next in order to make ends meet. So that, in general, seems to have the effect of really limiting participation from parts of the world and parts of our own society and country that we would love to see be active contributors.
But what have you been able to do that's
Sure.
impacted that?
So one thing that we've really been focusing on is around encouraging more women to participate in Wikipedia. We talk about the need for increased gender diversity because there is a correlation that we can see between who contributes and then how diverse and how broad the knowledge is on Wikipedia. So only 16.5% of Wikipedia articles on English Wikipedia, of all the biographies that we have, are of women. In theory, we would expect that if our contributor base was more diverse, we would end up with a more diverse reflection of notable people in the world around us. And we think that's really critical because our mission is all the world's knowledge and every single human who can participate in it, but you're not going to have all the world's knowledge if you don't really have that diversity of participants. So
correct me if I'm wrong
yeah.
on the details, but I remember reading about this woman who has been actively trolled online,
Yes.
Who every time she receives a hateful email, she goes and writes a new article about a woman scientist on Wikipedia. And
Yeah, that's Emily Temple Wood, and she is a med student right now here in the US. She is a remarkable figure, and she has responded by taking online harassment and really driving a positive agenda. Of course, we don't want that to be the primary reason people are editing Wikipedia.
Fighting trolls.
Fighting trolls. What we have found is that some of the ways that we've been able to make progress on what we refer to as the gender gap or lack of gender diversity is by encouraging different modes of participation, contribution, thinking about it as a really communal exercise, fostering and hosting initiatives that are designed to encourage really targeted editing of articles that give people easy points of entry and allow them to do it in a more community-based setting.
So this is something you're taking really seriously.
It's something we take very seriously, absolutely.
So I think especially relevant to this audience is the fact that you run an enormous, one of perhaps the most influential tech nonprofit. So let's talk about challenges that you face that anyone here would, which would be things around keeping your site running or hiring in a very competitive San Francisco environment.
Yes.
How do you handle that? What are some tips and tricks you can offer?
So keeping the site running, we're lucky to have a phenomenal team of operations engineers. I think about 18 people who keep the site up, and it's great. We've got uptime 99.9%. But how do we...
18 seems kind of low.
Right, exactly. It is kind of low. There are operations engineers. About half of the organization is our technology or product, in our technology or product teams. And so there are lots of other functions that people do, but they're the ones who maintain the sites and the servers, because we don't actually use cloud services. We host and roll our own, which is...
Where are your servers?
Our primary servers are in Virginia, and we have some other backup servers in Texas.
Why don't you host elsewhere? Why don't you use other people's hosting?
We have long had a perspective on wanting to be as independent as we possibly can, and we have felt over time that this was the right decision for us to have full control over our entire stack, essentially. And so we roll our own DNS and we host our own servers. It's kind of unusual in this day and age, but it's something that works for us. Yeah. But so hiring, I mean, I think the thing that we have found is that, you know, in the market, particularly for engineers, you would think it would be really tough to get people engaged and to bring people on, but we find that we get absolutely top-notch people because we're able to offer flexibility that other organizations don't necessarily offer. We are a fully remote organization for those who choose to work remotely. We have fantastic benefits, and we have an incredible mission, which is something that really brings people into the organization. And then what we work really hard on doing is once they're in the organization, finding ways to continue lifelong learning, engagement within sort of career pathways, opportunity and access to new and diverse things to work on. But you know, we also are very lucky in that as a nonprofit, we're able to pay at about 90% of sort of the scale for nonprofits, but you know, we're at about 50% for the for-profit industry. So we're always looking at how do we...
Right, and there's no IPO coming.
Oh, there's no IPO coming. Yeah, you're absolutely not, which is something I'm sure many folks in the audience deal with as well. So it's really around saying, like, look, you're able to work on some really challenging technical problems at scale, right? Those 18 operations engineers that I mentioned. You're able to do something that has a net benefit for the world, and we're going to support you as a human in the organization to the greatest extent that we can with really fantastic benefits and flexibility.
I want to go to audience questions, and if you have one, shoot your hand up right now, but I actually am going to go back to, the first thing that Katherine said when we got on the phone to prep for this was like, let's not just talk about fake news. But yeah, let's ask just real quickly, what advice can you offer the world about how to create a fair and balanced and credible approach to information that is not fake news?
Transparency. Transparency is baked into everything that Wikipedia does. Every single edit that has ever been made on the site, you can go back and take a look at from the very first creation of an article all the way through. You can see who added it, when they added it. You probably can see why they added it based on the comments and notes that they've made around it. That creates a sense of accountability for our editing community to our audience, and it also means that the audience can go ahead and investigate when they see information that they might have questions about. Go back to the source, check the citation. That's something that I don't think many institutions are set up to do, right? Version control in the newsroom is not actually a thing.
No, it's not. I
right.
mean, that sounds nice, but
it's tough.
It's a hard match.
And so, yeah.
But go ahead.
Hi. You mentioned that the community is engaged in things beyond just editing, like lobbying the European Parliament for open licenses. How do you decide? I guess what does that activity look like, and how do you decide which issues to work on and how to organize that community?
Sure. So the community, I mentioned policy advocacy as an issue, but we also, community members lead partnerships with educational institutions, cultural institutions. We just launched a new partnership with the Metropolitan Museum of Art recently through community members in New York. And it's really self-generated. People identify issues that they want to work on, and they don't have to seek permission from the foundation. It's part of the distributed model. I think it's one of the things that allows us to survive at scale, because if we were approving everything that went out the door, it would actually be really tough. It's based on a core set of values that community members own and discuss on a fairly consistent basis, and it's how we sort of stay centered to that as a means of prioritization. So we're less involved. We do have community consultations, as I said, on those values or on what those policy priorities are, and it's really quite sort of self-stabilizing.
Up here.
Hi. I touched upon this briefly, but I'm just kind of curious, just given this day and age, and how when one thinks information, they think Wikipedia. How much have you maybe had to drastically up your cybersecurity? Because I can see so many horrifying scenarios of always malicious attacks, either of misinformation or just rewriting history. I mean, you name it. And I'm surprised I haven't heard, Wikipedia being attacked to the same scale as you would imagine others that really, I work at a bank, so I'm almost just curious how that has affected you in your day-to-day and your cost and your staffing and how much of a suck that is.
So when it comes to sort of like hard security as opposed to content security, we're really lucky in that our security team has like 400 or 600 volunteer developers that they work with all the time. So we have many, many eyes on the project. That is true of how content's created. It's also true of how we track bugs and how we patch them. When it comes to the content generation, one of the advantages of Wikipedia is that we have different layers of protection on articles. So, for example, if an editor sees that an article is under attack from some sort of really obvious sock puppeting or the like, they can actually put a protection on it and say, until you have demonstrated that you've edited more than 100 times and you're a good faith editor, you can't edit this article. And it can go all the way up to completely locked down, which sometimes happens. The thing that we worry about a little bit more is the less obvious, change in tone or sort of the takeover of content to move it from neutral to not neutral. But even still, I think that the article about HIV and AIDS has thousands of people who have it on their watch list. So every single change that gets made to it, you have thousands of eyes who are watching it. And that is a really great, that's how the self-regulation of the system actually works.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have time for any more questions.
I'm sorry.
No. We could listen to you for a while, I think. And hopefully those 18 operations engineers have,
I'll send them my best
secure.
regards from this whole
Thank
conference.
you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Katherine.
Thank you so much.